Welcome to Infintech, charting the future of banking. Organised by Logate, your painless vendor for digital journey, in partnership with Mastercard. Together towards tomorrow.
Good morning, Dobre jutro, and welcome to day 2, also known as the day of hangover. It is a big honor to be here, and I wanted to thank the Logate team to organize this wonderful event for us. We have seen a lot of interesting things yesterday. We had a busy day yesterday. Today is going to be less busy. We have seen presentations and discussions on AI and digitalization and lots of different topics. We even traveled back in time to 1979. Believe it or not, I do remember 1979. I have some different memories from there, mainly in the kindergarten. But today, let's come back to today, and actually let's go to the future. Let's see what is going to happen in the region in the next couple of years. And the best example I can give you is our example. I'm from Hungary. We implemented instant payments in the last 7 years in Hungary. I like to split it into 2 parts. We actually call it IPS and IPS 2.0. IPS, instant payment solution. I hope everybody is familiar with instant payments. Instant payments is account-to-account payments instantly, so within a few seconds, 24/7 hours a week. So, what did we do in Hungary? Sorry. This date is very, very important for us in Hungary, because this is 2020, 2nd of March. This is the Hungarian order of writing a date. This is when we went live with the instant payments. It was already a tough project. We started in 2017. So the original implementation took 3 years for the central infrastructure and for the banks to implement. Why did it take so long? There are several reasons for that. I don't have enough time to explain. Usually this is a 3 hours long workshop that I present, so I'm trying to narrow it down today. The major challenge was that we have 30 banks in Hungary, and all 30 were mandatory to connect to the instant payment central infrastructure. So this is a big challenge to do in a country, to do at the same time. The central bank decided that it should be mandatory for the bank. That was unique at that time in 2017 when they chose to mandate the banks to connect the system. And it turned out to be very successful, because now each account in Hungary is available for instant payments. They didn't just make it mandatory to connect to the system, but they also made it mandatory for the banks to execute payments under a certain amount, electronically initiated in the system, which resulted in that by the time I created these slides, we had 14 million transactions in the system per month. Last month it was already 16 million. This is actually underlying one of the discussions we have later about the growth of instant payments. So we have a proven system with 14 million, now 16 million transactions per month, executed under 2 seconds. The regulation, the EU regulation says it should be 10 seconds. The Hungarian regulation was more bold. It's 5 seconds in Hungary. In practice, it is 2 seconds. So whenever I get the question whether instant payments is going to be quick enough to compete with card payments, it is. It is proven that it is. To put it into context, 50% of the payments in Hungary happen under 1 second. So the execution of the instant payment happens under 1 second. 98% is under 2 seconds. As a comparison, to understand how little 2 seconds are, if you drop a biscuit, you have 5 seconds to pick it up. This is not a proven data, this is just from experience, but just for comparison. So the payments are executed within 2 seconds, so it's really instant. And it's very reliable. We don't have issues with the system. We did have some issues at the beginning, prior to going live, with losing messages, which were then fixed, and the system is all perfectly working. But what did it bring to us? As I mentioned, it was mandatory for the banks to connect, so certain volumes were automatically redirected to the new system. But it didn't bring new volumes into the system. Why? Because the system itself is bank-to-bank. So I initiate a payment using my mobile application or my net bank, entering the details. We have proxy IDs, we have secondary identifiers, so it's not that complicated, but still, the whole flow is that I have to enter the data, I have to approve it, as I did before, So it did not catch up in terms of new volumes. The existing volumes were redirected. It is already very useful. I usually bring the example of the everyday situations that we are using instant payments for the time being. I play hockey. I play hockey once a week on Sundays evenings. And, we pay for the ring. And one of the guys, one of my friends, he's collecting the money from the rest. I used to pay cash. And 2 years after going live, my friend asked me, you who had been involved in instant payments, why don't you initiate transfers? So since then, I use instant payments to pay him. There are some other interesting things that we implemented. We have, as I mentioned, we have proxy IDs and we have request to pay as well, which is also, there is a potential in request to pay for certain use cases, but not all of the use cases. So once we completed it in 2020, we wrote an article. We are very happy to share that with you. The article is about all the interesting experience that we had from the practical perspective while implementing instant payments in Hungary. These are the topics of the article. As I mentioned, we are happy to share it with you. I think it's a good read. So that is from 2020. I just mentioned before, it is publicly available on the internet. I got an email this summer from Sierra Leone, from a guy who was implementing instant payments there, saying that they found this article and they were very happy because it is in line with their experience. So I was very proud of sharing that. But let's move on. Let's move on to IPS 2.0. In 2020, we started an R&D project, a research and development project with Capsys, because we looked at the instant payments and we wanted to see how you can use instant payments. Of course, you have the major comparison is always cards. And what we had seen at that time is that most of the services which want to use instant payments are trying to somehow reuse cards or certain elements of the cards, which makes sense because the cards is everywhere. You have POS terminals, you have VPOSs, etc. What we did is we took a blank sheet and we looked at all the use cases because we also saw that most of the solutions are focusing on one use case, either P2P payments or payments on a VPOS or in-store payments. So what we said is that there are several different use cases where instant payment can be used. Also, please bear in mind, the card, as we mentioned, in 1979, the card was already decades old. So the card is it's based on a very old technology. It's coming from the era when internet and mobile phones and smartphones were not present. People were not available. People do not have connection in their pockets to their banks 24/7. And everything that is happening in the recent years is based on that flow, which is based on being remote and not online. So we took the different use cases, the different possible situations where we want to pay. So I can want to make a payment in an app. I can go to a web shop using my laptop or my PC. Or I get an invoice in an email or even a letter. I can pay at a cash register or at a POS terminal. These are completely different ways of payments. If you look at cards, this is practically two different words, card present and card not present. And the flow and the way that we pay are completely different for these two. In fact, the online payment is very difficult. It's very different. It's very complicated. I need to register my card number. I need to enter my details, or I trust someone with my card details, which is not safe. I can give you examples. I'm not going to right now. I have very little time. So we took all the use cases and we said, okay, how are we going to initiate payment? And of course, we looked at the existing technologies because you want to use something that exists. You don't want to reinvent the wheel. It's not going to spread. So you have to use something that is already there. And we mapped the technologies to the situations. We basically looked at three technologies: transmission technologies, transmitting data to the payee or the payer, depending on which direction we want to execute the payment. And of course, we came to the conclusion that QR code is very important. It's very useful because technically, QR code can be used in most of the situations, but not all of them. And they are not that fashionable in Hungary. NFC is very important because there are POS terminals. The retailers are very familiar with NFC, so they want to use NFC. We got the feedback. The R&D was not just us, it was with partners across Hungary. retailers, cash register manufacturers, etc. We got the feedback that they want to use NFC, whatever it takes. But of course, there's a situation where you cannot use QR code, neither NFC, and that is when you make the purchase on your mobile phone. And this is, by statistics, 50% of all the online payments are done on the same mobile phone that I want to pay. Obviously, I cannot read the QR code and cannot read an NFC. Well, again, I will tell you later at the coffee, you can use QR code to a certain extent, but that's a different topic. So this is why deep link comes into picture. You might not be familiar with deep link, but this is very simple. It's a URL. If you touch on the URL, and it allows an application to launch. You might all be familiar with, for example, Facebook or LinkedIn. If you get a link for LinkedIn, it launches the app. And this is what we are using. In fact, the three technologies are using the same technology behind it. So it's a unified data entry method. Practically, these are just the transmission layers to transmit the information. I'm a very technical guy, so please apologize. I'm pretty sure that I get very excited when it comes to technology. I'm trying to keep myself from that. But for you to understand, it is important that we have three different technologies, but they are interoperable. It's the same thing being passed through these three. And all three are leading to the bank's mobile application. We decided not to try to push a new application on the market. Why? Because pushing a new application would take a lot of money and a lot of efforts. And the banks would not trust third-party applications. I know that there is open banking. I was involved, and we were involved in implementing open banking in Hungary. The user experience is not there yet. So in Hungary, we decided that we should rely on the bank's mobile applications. And it's very simple in terms of implementation technology to implement these flows. So we ended up with a solution which uses the bank's mobile applications. The banks trust their own application. We had seen that previously in Hungary that somebody wanted to implement a new application, an interface with the banks. Never happened. You can rely on the bank. The bank already relies on the application and retains the customer, so it doesn't see it as a disadvantage. So what happened is we invented this flow, which is unified, and it's also called Unified Data Entry, UDE, in the Hungarian regulation. Once we completed the project, well, a bit more detail about the project, but I'm not going to all the details now, I'm running out of time. So this is when, in 2021, IPS 2.0, the overlay service on top of instant payment, started in Hungary, which ended up this year, 1st of September, we went live. All the banks were mandatory to implement. The Central Bank of Hungary decided that, well, it was a good decision to make it mandatory for the banks to connect to the central infrastructure. Now all the accounts are available. It's also a good decision to have one solution, one standard in Hungary. I'm not allowed to call it standard. One regulation in Hungary, which is going to be IPS 2.0 project name. The solution is called Quick, QVIK in Hungary. So we went live on the 1st of September. All the banks who have mobile application implemented it in their application, and now it is being implemented on the side of the merchants. I prefer to call them payees. And the first ones are web shops, because that's the simplest to implement, and there are some POS terminals that are already implemented, that have already implemented this solution. I'm not going to go in all the details. This was one of the results of the R&D project. The different aspects of having a payment solution which meets all these criteria. This was the R&D. This was the topic of the R&D project. We took all these aspects, we analyzed them in detail, and this is how we came up with this solution. There is an important thing that I have to mention about instant payments. Instant payments doesn't come with chargeback. Okay, so when you implement instant payments, you implement account-to-account payments, but you don't implement a mechanism for chargeback like there is in card. So we had to implement that in Hungary. The central bank had to regulate the complaint management and the chargeback. It's not a complicated implementation from technical perspective, so it's not that exciting for me, but it's very important from the terms of reliability to define the rules, who is reliable for what, and who should do what, and what are the deadlines. So we also implemented that in Hungary. And one more important thing that I wanted to mention, which is security. Again, fraud is a very important topic. I'm not going to all the detail on fraud, but what we made sure is that the QR code is secure, the URL that it contains is secure. We're using digital signature to make it secure, because one of the biggest criticisms of QR codes is that it's very easy to forge. Not in this one, not in this case, because the content is protected by a digital signature. It can be transmitted. I'm also a member of the body in Hungary who is supporting the standardization of QR codes. So there is the EPC document, you might be familiar with it, which is adopted by the countries in the region. There is an EPC regulation for QR code. Unfortunately, it's separated for QR code and NFC. And now it is being standardized. And I'm also helping the market, the European market, to complete the standard. So what we have right now in Hungary, as I mentioned, it's called Quick. By the time I created these slides, it was not yet published, so that's why I don't have the name on the slide, which is all three technologies in one, and overlay service. And then we are looking forward to extend it in the country to new merchants, to new pays. And of course, I just completed in time, so I'm okay with that. You cannot complete a presentation nowadays without mentioning AI. AI is very important. So may I just thank you for your attention today. Thank you so much.